and thank you for joining me for another episode of High Voltage. I'm your host. I'm best-selling international author MacKenzie Nelson. I wrote the book My Father's Feathers, and it launched back in September. If you're digging the show but you want some further insights into things I'm talking about, grab yourself a copy of this guy and they'll fill you in a little bit more. Today's episode, I want to talk about triggered, right? Estrangement. So we're talking about you're walking out estrangement like I am, and suddenly an incident happens and you're triggered and you are thrust back into, the psychological pain of really what symbolically you are walking out. As you know, if you're following me on Facebook, I posted recently about an incident that happened to me this weekend. I was going to meet a friend of mine for happy hour, my favorite restaurant in town. I've posted about it. And as I was sitting there waiting for her to show up, suddenly I hear, my sister's very distinctive laugh. And I'm like, just that shock of like, oh goodness, like it can't be. It can't be. But it is, it's her. And it's also her 40th birthday. And then it's my mom, it's my stepdad, and it's my brother, which gutted me. He lives in Tennessee, and him and his wife drove 9.5 hours into town, my town, and didn't tell me, and they're at my favorite restaurant. Shady, shady, shady. She'll never know because we never invite her anyways. We've just acted like she is no longer a part of our family, and just as long as we pretend like she wasn't, then she doesn't exist. And there's been no conversations, no invitations, no nothing. And to add insult to injury, my sister and her husband are pastors. It's like a total ick vibe on the millionth level. And then when you think it can't get any worse, you hear your mom's cackling like, well, so glad the whole family's here. That's like my best impression. And just roarous laughter as you're sitting there frantically texting your friend that's, about to show up any minute. And my initial inclination was to be like, oh, I should just leave and go somewhere else. I really don't want to deal with this. But then I just felt like this strength and this courage, this extra surge. If you've ever drank a cup of coffee and suddenly you're like, ooh, now I feel more chipper. It was like that minus the coffee. And I knew that the right thing to do for me in that situation was to sit and face it, because that's literally what I wrote the book about. That's what I talk about to you guys is don't look the other way, right? When something's uncomfortable, I always challenge you to lean into it. And so I'm like, I gotta follow my own advice here. I can't just turn tail and run. What did I do wrong? All I've done is stand up and speak the truth, and all they've done is be dodgy and shady and not have any conversations about anything I wrote about and just pretend like I don't exist, all the while living in the same town as me. So I never know when I leave my front door if I'm gonna have another interaction, which is something that I've had to work through. Every time you see me out in a public setting, that's a victory for me because I've had to fight my front door for every single one of those times. I never know what could be behind door number one. It could be your whole family toasting at your sister's 40th birthday party while you sit 10 feet away watching the horror of all of it go down. But here's the truth. I enjoyed my old fashioned. I enjoyed sitting and catching up with my best friend since high school, who actually wrote a review for my book. She is now a PhD. She's a doctor of psychology, and she shares that, I shared my experiences and unwavering spiritual faith with such a clear, honest vulnerability that is truly inspiring. And she actually has a copy of this and uses it for her patients as a resource, which is thank you, Jennifer. One of the best compliments I've ever received about writing this book is that it's actually serving as therapy for other people walking through similar life circumstances. It's something that continually touches me, and I couldn't have had, someone else to share in this very challenging, interaction with. But I sat there, I endured it, I enjoyed myself. I really did. And it honestly felt like the manifestation in a physical sense that I had been practicing this whole time, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I have been redirecting my thoughts. That's really what I tell people now, and it gets easier and easier. At first, going through the estrangement, I lost my mom, my sister, my brother, my grandmother, my aunts, all of their family in one foul swoop. I walked around for, I don't even know how long, feeling like I was missing limbs, bleeding to death, all while, nobody even knew. I didn't have the book published yet. I was just starting to write, and it was a living hell. My life was a living hell. I was tears, sadness. I mean, it's still hard. Every sporting event my kids have, my mom's not there, my sister's not there. They don't send my kids presents. My kids don't even know what they look like, It's so sad considering she's a pastor, and my 6-year-old, when we had to go to my cousin's wedding a couple of weeks ago, I was like, she might be there, I'm not sure. And she's like, well, what does she even look like, I was like, yeah, that's pretty bad, when you're a pastor and you don't even reach out to make sure my kids know who you are. And I'm not over here actively declining it. I'm just saying we need to have some conversation to where, I'm actually invited to some things for starters. But anyways, I was seated by the door as this was happening, and I was facing them, and they're like 10 feet away. And I was looking right, and my friend's like, do you want to switch me seats? Because her back was to them. And I was like, no, I don't want to switch you seats. I want to sit here and I want to look at them. And what I was watching was them squirm. My mom was so nervous, and you could just see like the grimaces on their faces. And I was like, yeah, you should be nervous. You should feel uncomfortable because you've done a lot of these things and you haven't done the honorable thing of facing up and telling the truth. Instead, you've just avoided me and act like I don't exist, which is, how cowardly is that? Why can't we have a conversation where you're not threatening to sue me? Where which I'm still waiting for that paperwork. By the way, Mom, if you're watching this, I still haven't received the lawsuit in the mail, and I think it's been like 9 months, nor do I understand. I've yet to hear the parts that are specific lies about you. I'm not sure what those are, and no one else really is either. So unless you're really gonna sue me, like, just write a letter or something. And like, I just don't get it, quite frankly, at this point. Written the book. These are actual things that happened to me in this book. This is the truth. And it's much, much worse than you think, because unfortunately, I will tell you, I will not be using this publisher again. Unfortunately, when my mom threatened to sue me, this was about a month away from coming out, and I thought my publisher was my friend. I had worked for her. I trusted her. I had written such great things about her in this book. And when it came down to it, I was like, oh no, like I was just sharing with her, my mom is like threatening to sue me. Well, she got scared, and she literally threatened me within 2 weeks of this really being published that she was going to pull her publication from me unless I cut certain things out of the book that she felt should be removed. So I either was going to have to self-publish, or I had to cut the things out that she said I should cut out. One of them being, if you've read my book, the part about my mom, where I'm playing basketball, my mom and my dad are going through a divorce. My mom actually started dating my assistant college coach, the defensive coach. They were hooking up, and she brutally dumped him for my stepdad, pissing off the assistant coach. And that's why I got benched for my sophomore year playing basketball. Lost all of my confidence, didn't want to play at the next level because I thought I had gotten benched because like, oh, your defense wasn't that good, when really he was sleeping with my mom. And then she dumped him for who's my stepdad now. And my publisher made me cut that part out of my book because she was afraid my mom was going to sue her when I thought we were friends. So that's another development. I'm still looking, for a new publisher. I won't be using this publisher again. First time in media, I'm learning some really hard, brutal lessons. So, you write a book about bullying with your mom, then you get bullied by your publisher on top of it. And I didn't know. I was in suspense for a couple weeks about whether she was even going to publish it or not, when I just thought I'm reaching out to someone who's been a big support to me. It really, really hurt me. And it still does, because I ended up like working for her for a while. She was in a bind and I helped her out, and she just turns around and threatens, to like pull the whole publication because my mom might sue her, when I knew my mom had no grounds. I know I'm telling the truth. And that's how I told my publisher, but she still freaked out and was like, well, I'm not publishing it unless you take things out. So that's one thing that got removed. So it's even worse than what you've really read in this book, what I have walked through, even having my story out there. It has been one horrible incident after another, on top of the fact that I live in the same town as my estranged family and never know when I'm going to run into them. I cleared my father's name in this book. He was accused of molesting me for a long time. Couldn't even remember my own molestation till the pandemic. Finally was able to clear the air here, and then he gets diagnosed with 2 different levels of cancer after the book comes out. And flash forward to the most recent incident, whereas my family leaves the restaurant, my brother and his wife drive 9.5 hours in to ignore me at my favorite restaurant in my own town. And they can't even have the nerve to face me as they leave. They act like I'm not even there. And then it's like I'm watching them leave one at a time, and I'm like, talking to my friend, I'm like, here we go. Next up, we have my mom and my stepdad, who walks by, opens his arms up, so glad you could make it. And I was like, me too. What do you even say? Laughing at me, all these other things. Well, then finally my sister, whose 40th birthday uninvited party I was at, starts to walk up with her husband, and she says, hi, it's good to see you. Good to see you, Jen. She knew her from a long, she was actually in my best friend's wedding, which is another story. And, she's like, can I give you a birthday hug? And I was just like, sure, why not? Happy birthday, because that's just my heart. That's who I am. I am always looking to give people the benefit of the doubt. And even after all this mistreatment, I still want my sister to have a great 40th birthday. I did not want to show up at the same restaurant. Who wants to go through that? But ultimately, I'm proud of how I handled it, because I sat there, I confronted the situation, even though it really triggered a lot of that pain. And what I saw at the end of that dinner was, it really wasn't that bad. I enjoyed my company. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed seeing how much the mental and emotional work I had put in was now on display in the physical sense, right? I was able, since I had practiced this for the last 4 years, of redirecting my thoughts. That's what you can do if you are literally one of the 1 in 4 people currently walking out estrangement. That's right. Isn't that such a high statistic? I was shocked when I looked it up. You can look it up at www.yougov.polls. It's literally 1 in 4 Americans that were polled. Out of 11,000 Americans, it's 1 in 4, 29%. As of October 2022, of Americans are walking out estrangement from a primary family member, siblings, parents, children, or grandparents. 1 in 4, guys. That's how big this is. And why don't you feel like 1 in 4 people are walking this out? Because they feel ashamed. Because there's such a high shame stigma societally on walking out estrangement. In order for me to share this with you, to write the book, to talk about it, I have quite literally gone through tormenting conversation after tormenting conversation, been dragged through it, been questioned, been judged, been this, been that, and it hurts so bad. It tears me up inside when people are rude to me about this or unkind, on top of the severe unkindness I'm already facing. But ultimately, I trust God to heal me from those wounds. And I say, if you have set me to it, God, if this is your calling on my life, I will stand up. I will face every single thing coming at me, because I have nothing to hide. I am telling the truth. And I know God is with me. And I could tell by the way they were squirming in their chairs at that dinner that they felt that. They felt the weight of what their actions have been. It was the physical manifestation, the accumulation of what they've really been doing to me for the last 4.5 years, leaving me out of every holiday, out of everything, not conversing with my kids, ignoring my family, pretending like we don't exist, when they know I'm telling the truth. They just don't want to face that their mother is really this person. They don't want to face that they are still choosing, to support such evil inside themselves and with my mother, instead of, really breaking that manipulation that they were led into as children and standing by their faith and saying, what literally would Jesus do in these circumstances? So if you are, one out of the 4, like I am, one of the 29% walking out estrangement, and like me, are feeling triggered. Maybe, you had to run into a family member at the grocery store, or they texted you, or, just whatever it was, a traumatic memory popped up. The first thing that has helped me is to understand, okay, what is this feeling? What am I, this weird, stressy, stuck feeling, staticky? Okay, I'm understanding this is what it feels like to be triggered, to feel unsafe, to feel thrust back into my family home as a child. Even this weekend, we got my daughter a Barbie dream house, and she was like, mommy, play Barbies with me. And I pick up a Barbie and immediately just start crying, because I remember a specific incident, where my mom, I'm just playing Barbies and just comes up and rips my head off for, I don't know, the millionth thing I did wrong that I wasn't even aware of doing. And it's like I have to overcome that, memory being sparked in order for my 6-year-old, because she doesn't understand, why is mommy crying? I feel bad. I asked her to play Barbies and now she's crying. This is a lot like what a life looks like, for someone who's been very traumatized throughout their childhood and is still dealing with a lot of trauma. I'm not a perfect person, quite, the opposite. And that's why I am sharing my journey in real time with you guys, to know that if you're struggling with this situation, you're perfectly normal. You're a human, and just go slow. Understand you're being triggered. Understand that things may get to you more, external stimulants. Maybe a friend does something, that normally wouldn't bother you, but in this situation now, you're just feeling raw and it really bothers you. It's okay to understand that maybe you're gonna need a little more time to heal. So really for me, I communicate with my husband, with friends, I've just been triggered. This was really hard for me. And I try to talk about it to the best of my ability to let people know where I'm at. If I do take something a little differently in this time where I normally wouldn't, I'm in a really sensitive spot right now and I need extra kindness and care. And I'm really only interested in relationships where I am getting that understanding on the other side of the table from people, where they know, my story, they've read the book, they understand me, and I feel like they are willing and able to provide that safe space for me. Otherwise, now that you've been triggered, might be a good time to put an arm length distance, between you and anyone else who you're just feeling isn't respecting your journey, isn't walking out, being around you with that extra level of care. And if you feel, that hurt, it's okay to take a step back and give yourself space and some more time to reflect, to heal. Another thing you can do is write about it. That's really been a lot of what's helped me process, is write about the circumstance, the situation. Process your pain, get it out there. Or if you aren't partnered with a therapist currently, look one up, connect with someone that you feel you can trust. And even if you have to go through a couple to find one that you really feel connects with you and understands you, keep going on that journey. Whatever you do, don't stop speaking out. Don't stop looking for healthy ways to process the pain of what estrangement is, has been, and continues to be for you. And look for those people who are the safe houses of kindness and love and aren't looking to judge your situation with your family. More, they're looking to be a soft place for you to land. And they might not know all the goings on like you do of your family. You're the only one that has lived it. And they can't really know, deeply and fully, like it's impacting you, they can't get that because that hasn't been their journey. But look for people who choose to look past the judgment and right versus wrong, and just look to love you for where you're at. Because no matter what comes up in your life, whether it's estrangement or whether you lose a job, maybe you don't have the money you once did and you can't hang out with them as much, the same people that will judge you for walking out estrangement will probably be the same ones that are going to judge you if other life circumstances, fall through. So I'm looking for that tribe of people that support me, regardless of financial situations, regardless of social standing, regardless if I'm popular or not popular. I am always MacKenzie, and I am always looking to uplift, encourage, and shine a bright light on anyone who is willing to be vulnerable and truthful about what the life journey really has been for themselves, and share that wisdom with each other. Because what I have is knowledge, and that is powerful. I know the hurt firsthand of being excluded, of being singled out and isolated. And really, we haven't been on speaking terms for this, but this has been 41 years for me. I, from day one, was never accepted into the family I was born in. I had a different biological father, but the father who has raised me, Paul, I refer to as Dad. Not my stepdad, because he was in the room as my mom gave birth to me, and he adopted me. So he is my dad. The only difference is the one I never met that helped create me. I have his DNA, but I do believe I have the heart, Father Paul, and your continued prayers and support as he's on this very tumultuous cancer journey are always appreciated. That is another thing that resounded and triggered for me in that moment. Having my father, right, hurting so badly, I'm sure he wants all of his kids together, and I want to give him that. Why don't my sister and brother want to overlook petty differences or have a conversation so we can be that for him? He needs a united front with his children to feel even more encouraged and supported, and that's always my heart. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You're not alone if you have been triggered. Estrangement is a multifaceted, terrible journey that I wish on no one, but while I'm in it, I will share whatever wisdom I attain during the duration of my estrangement. And again, always am praying and prayerful about healing that could take place in our family. And no matter what, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be speaking out. I'm going to be sharing about my life. And nothing is going to stop what God has called me to do, no matter how much pain I have to endure. You guys have a great weekend. Thank you so much for your time. Reach out, hit me up. If something I said inspired you, I would love to get some good feedback. Thank you.